Mike Mazzei.
Hi, Cody.
Thanks for letting me come in and interview you again. We talked in the fall, and you've made it through the runoff, or to the runoff.
Part one.
So you bet. So last time we talked a lot about your history, your family history, your business history, your time in the Senate. We went deep dove into a lot of those things. Today, I kind of just want to stay into your campaign for governor. So, but before we do, just kind of remind the listeners and viewers of your background, your family background, a little bit of business, and your quick time in the Senate.
I'm a financial planner. Started a company in 1996. Fortunately, the Lord has blessed it, and Trinity Strategic Wealth has just about $1.7 billion in client assets. I married the 1989 Oral Roberts University homecoming queen in 1990. She doesn't like it when I brag, but maybe she won't see this. And we wanted a big family, had some health challenges, adopted a daughter from Russia, did some fertility stuff that worked out better than expected, had triplets. A couple years later, had bonus brothers, so 5 kids under the age of 5. We're super blessed. They all love Jesus, and they all have jobs.
That's a good point.
I got a chance to be in the Oklahoma Senate for 12 years. Did some big stuff since I was chairman of the Senate Finance Committee for 10 years. I rescued the almost bankrupt pension system for teachers and police officers. Got rid of the $1.5 billion giveaway to the wind power companies. Passed a couple big tax cuts, even launched the Oklahoma Back to School sales tax holiday. And then I was Governor Stitt's first secretary of finance, and together he and I built the first $1 billion in the state's savings account. So we've been blessed with some opportunities to help people pursue their life and financial goals and make life a little bit better for the people of Oklahoma. And that's a big reason why we started this campaign a year and a half ago.
Sure. It's been a long road, I'm sure. You almost got it done, though.
We're getting there.
Getting close.
33 days to go as of this recording.
Yes, sir. Yep. So let's dive right into some of the things you've gone through, maybe some changes through the campaign. I mean, like you said, it's been a year and a half. The world's changed a little bit on the national stage. All these things, there's always a hot button every year, right? So your platform for governor, quickly, what's your top 5 main subjects?
I built a plan so we could make Oklahoma a no-income tax state and stop losing companies taken off to Texas. And my plan includes abolishing property taxes for seniors and veterans because they're just terrified of losing their homes after 30, 40, 50% increases in their property taxes. I will hire a statewide literacy director to launch a statewide reading program like they have in Mississippi, which they went from 50th to 1st in reading outcomes. And our plan also includes enforcing Oklahoma's Constitution, which forbids the foreign ownership of land. And when we do all that together, as conservative Republicans, we can launch a wave of growth and opportunity for our kids and our grandkids.
Sure. Yeah. So going back to taxes, what do you think is the priority, income tax or property tax? Can we do both, or should we do one first?
Well, in the first year of Mazzei administration, we will propose to the legislature to decrease the income tax rate from 4.5% to 3% as step 1 in a 3-part strategy to become a no-income tax state. We can do that by cleaning out unnecessary junk and giveaways in the tax code and literally create what's called a revenue neutral scenario where we still have the same amount of tax collections coming in for core services like education and roads and bridges and public safety. Property taxes are completely separate. The state of Oklahoma does not get any tax receipts from property tax collections. But like I had mentioned, it is time for real relief for our retirees who've spent 4 or 5 decades of contributing to the community. And back in 1947, when the $1,000 homestead exemption was put in place because you shouldn't really have to pay rent to the government for your entire life on your home, it's never changed. And so we've got to roll out a plan that I believe is pro-reform but anti-chaos. And my plan includes phasing out property taxes over a 3 to 6 year period. It'll be quicker in the urban counties than it is in the rural counties. But after I crunched the numbers, I found that only 10% of the total property tax base in most counties are collected from seniors 65 and older on their homes. Well,
So it would be a big hit if it would help them more than it would hurt the counties.
today we're in Oklahoma County, and in Oklahoma County, property tax collections have been growing 7% a year. Well, if we phase it out over 3 years, that 10%, well, we're still going to have more than 3% per year in net increase on property tax collections, even as we phase it out over a 3 year period. So we can do this responsibly, and payments for school bonds, funding for core services like the county sheriff will be just fine.
Yeah, I think most people will assume that they would just send our schools and county governments into chaos.
Nope.
I mean,
We've got a good, reasonable plan that will free up seniors to feel confident about living in the homes the rest of their lives and not pay rent to the government. And the most egregious thing about this is, if you bought a home for $50,000 and today it's worth $200,000, well, you have to pay tax on $150,000 of gain that you'd never actually got to experience. And then the way the system works now, not only are you paying a tax on an unrealized gain, but it goes up 3% a year. It's just totally unfair to seniors, and the Mazzei plan is going to do something about it.
so slow valuations, help out seniors, and this would be for their homestead, right? Their
Just the
primary resident,
homestead.
basically.
My 2 commercial
businesses.
buildings, business buildings, people that own a bunch of rental homes, we're all still going to have to pay property taxes on those kind of properties. But seniors shouldn't have to pay it on their homes.
Sure, yeah. You said unrealized gains. It's really equivalent to paying income tax on income you might have in 10 years, 20 years. You're not going to pay unrealized gains on what you would make in the future.
I've had people tell me, Cody, I can't retire because I got to come up with money to pay for my property taxes. It's just, it's time for a change.
Yeah, when you probably need to touch on insurance as well.
Yep, I've got a plan for bringing down the costs of homeowners and property and casualty insurance as well.
Before we do that, can we jump back to income tax? We touched on it in our first interview back in the fall, and kind of the conservative view of cutting taxes is, the more money that people can keep, the more they put back into the economy, and people can talk a little bit more about the benefits of cutting taxes and how it could help.
There's literally a report today that shows tax revenue, income tax revenue for this fiscal year has gone up, even as the tax rates have gone down. Now, there's a limit to how much that can occur, but we do know just from pure economics that the more people that you have in the system and the lower the rates, the more growth and stability you get on tax collections. That's why no income tax states like Tennessee that are based on an activity model have had 58% more economic growth than Oklahoma over a 10-year period. And they have better schools, better roads, and more public safety officers. So we've got to shift from taxing our work and our labor and our productivity to a system that's more activity-based. Now, having said that, that's a little farther down the path. Our first 2 steps of the 3-step program are just to work on this tax code of ours that is 50, 60 years out of date. And by that, my calculations suggest we can lower the rate from 4.5% to about 2.5% and be kind of revenue neutral. Step 3, in terms of switching from an Oklahoma less efficient, less productive model to a Tennessee type model, very robust and efficient, much more growth than we have. And they don't have oil and natural gas in that state. We could have done this a long time ago, like Alaska and South Dakota and Texas, the other oil and gas producing states that are no income tax states. But that type of change will require a vote of the people. And I just try to give people some examples on, would you rather pay taxes on your income, on your work, or would you rather pay it on an activity tax? In Oklahoma, when us Thunder fans go to a basketball game, we don't pay a sales tax on the ticket. But in Tennessee, they pay a sales tax on going to the NBA game there. And I think if the people of Oklahoma didn't have to pay taxes on their work, but had to pay a sales tax on their tickets to go to a Thunder game, they'd still be sellouts of almost 19,000 people.
Sure. And at least then they would have a choice, right?
And then they get to choose.
Sure. You only pay the tax if you use it or consume it, or
there you go.
It gives people choice, and that's what we want.
Liberty and freedom with your money goes a long way.
Sure. And you think with lower taxation, whether it's property tax, income tax, would bring more people here, people would want to grow their businesses and their families here?
Oh, just imagine if we have a lower tax rate and we tell the people that have had success in Missouri and Kansas and North Texas, which has really bad property taxes, hey, bring your money and your wealth, because remember, it's seniors 65 and older, and they have just buckets and buckets of money and lifetime savings, and they're going to pass that on to the next generation. Right. Imagine if we can attract all of that to Oklahoma, we could become an engine or an economic powerhouse.
Yeah. Well, then let's stay on economic development a little bit. So, of course, our party in Oklahoma, we're struggling somewhere between the bad words of economic development. Of course, we want to take care of environment and growth, and we talk about manufacturing. So what do you have a vision for the state's role or the governor's role in economic development?
Well, a couple things we should point out when it comes to the importance of the production process. When we do tax reform in Oklahoma, we're never going to touch the manufacturing sale for resale exemption, and we're never going to touch the agriculture sales tax exemption. You don't tax these inputs along the way when manufacturers or our farmers and ranchers have to buy stuff to create the product that eventually goes to the store, and there's a sales tax. Now, having said that, I have a pretty bold economic growth plan for the state of Oklahoma. The first pillar is changing our tax code. Second pillar is we've got 29 career techs across the state of Oklahoma that are doing a great job, but add all the waiting lists up, and there's 7,500 students that want to get into an HVAC program or a car mechanic program or an aerospace mechanic program, but we're not giving them the right amount of resources to the career tech. Literally, this latest general appropriation bill by the state legislature gave a zero increase to the career tech program. We need to get these 7,500 students a skilled trade, because I hear from business owners all over the state, urban counties, rural counties alike, Cody, hey, we need good applicants that have some skills and have gone through a process of establishing some education and work ethic. So that's going to be a second pillar of our economic growth plan. And then third, we're going to start what I think we're going to call the Oklahoma Small Business Capital Program. So we align with Oklahoma-based businesses and less focused on chasing some of these nonsense green energy, foreign deals, like a Panasonic battery plant. I'm glad we didn't get that deal. And how about we collaborate with 5,000 Oklahoma-based businesses on best practices, maybe equipment for that next generation of farmer that wants to keep the family farm and expand. And you go through some checklist of best practices and maybe some marketing type strategies for that next little wave of growth to qualify for a no interest loan. If we can get 5,000 Oklahoma-based businesses growing 10 jobs each, none of them will make the front page of the newspaper.
Sure.
That's 50,000 jobs, and all those profits stay here versus a $900 million package we were willing to throw at a green energy company that was only going to give us 3,500 jobs. That's the kind of power I think we can bring to economic development.
So you're big on small business. Would you tie the career tech, small business administration together?
I'm a
Grow
financial
small business?
planner, a small business owner, 30 employees. It's the backbone of Oklahoma. It's the job growth that really becomes permanent versus some of the ups and downs that the larger public trading companies tend to go through. So we're gonna always chase whatever we can, across the United States and across the world that aligns with Oklahoma values and provides a great return on investment. But we want to really focus on Oklahoma-based businesses that are already here, that are already successful, but they could use a little bit of collaboration to get that next level of growth.
Yeah, as a small business owner, people, there's that line or that meme out there that, says we'll give an 18-year-old $100,000 for college, but we won't give him $100,000 to start a HVAC company but as a small business owner, access to capital is a big deal.
Yeah.
Plus your input cost.
I've heard for 20, 30 years, we don't have, access to capital for the small business world.
Access to real estate, labor, employment, qualified workers.
Some very smart, well-seasoned professionals and I have been, talking about this and collaborating on it for years. And we think the time is now to really align with Oklahoma small business owners in all parts of the economy, including our ranchers and farmers.
Sure. So kind of we're talking about career tech. So let's dive into education just a little bit.
We've got a huge need to address some changes in education. One of the reasons I decided I had to run for governor was we ranked 49th in the nation and we've got Republican supermajority. When only 20% of our public school students can read, Cody, that means 500,000 students are in the system and they can't read at grade level. They're not going to be prepared for career tech.
Right.
They're not going to be prepared for college, and life's going to be tough. Yet there's no accountability in the system. So we're going to launch a Mississippi-like statewide literacy program. I will hire a statewide literacy director in my very first week. And I've had a one-on-one meeting with the statewide literacy director of Mississippi. Her name is Amanda Malone. She's been involved in their statewide reading program since its very beginning 12, 13 years ago. And the three most important elements, she said, for success were all the curriculum has to be phonics-based. You have to have the right amount of reading coaches and specialists in the system to teach everybody out in the school districts, here's the new way of doing things. And then three, you have to have what's called the third grade reading gate, so there's accountability not to just pass the kids along to fourth grade, even if they're not reading. All the data tells us you really have to be able to you have to learn to read by third grade. So after third grade, you're reading to learn.
Right.
And so we're going to replicate that model. If Mississippi can do it, Oklahoma can do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you want to touch on your views of school choice and where you see the future of that going? The public school, private school, homeschool?
We're 100%, for school choice. And here is a big policy difference between, my opponent in this runoff and myself. I believe in school choice, have always supported school choice. Charter schools are a good option. And my opponent sued the statewide charter school board because, a Catholic church wanted to have a charter school, which is voluntary participation. Of course, the Trump administration was on the side of school choice in Oklahoma, and my opponent was against school choice. And that, along with many other reasons, is one of the reasons President Trump, endorsed me to be Oklahoma's next governor, along with the fact that we're so well aligned. The Mazzei plan in terms of transformational reform and better schools and lower taxes aligns so well with the Trump agenda of lower taxes, energy independence, robust strength for our country, is why we earned President Trump's endorsement, and we're really grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, if you want to jump to, before we go much further than that, if you want to talk about, of course, everybody wants to know about the debate, and I think it was down in Lubbock or Lawton.
Lawton.
Yeah. Do you want to address what you brought up about teachers or?
Well,
What you meant to say. I give grace to public officials who leave unwritten.
I appreciate it because I definitely botched my answer, and sometimes you're so charged up
Sure.
and you've only got 30 seconds to respond. What I usually say, which I got kind of wrong in that debate, is some of our 41 school districts are run by liberal, left-leaning administrators, heavily influenced by the teachers' unions that are resisting and opposing these very important reforms, and they run these school systems contrary to the conservative values of the parents who pay for these school systems. From my neck of the woods, Tulsa Public Schools is only getting 10 to 15% of all the students reading, at grade level, but they spent $75 million against Oklahoma law on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And if you look up their website today, they're still promoting that stuff.
Right.
And so there are definitely great conservative administrators and superintendents across Oklahoma. Two of my local superintendents, Dr. Stacy Butterfield, Chuck is at Jenks, and then Chuck Perry is at Broken Arrow. They're trying to do things the right way with a high level of excellence. But there's a lot of administrators and superintendents out there that grew up in this socialist left-leaning thinking at our colleges and universities. And we've got to give power back to the conservative parents who, as I said, pay for the system. And the only way we're going to do that, which is the point I was trying to make at the Lawton debate, is we've got to move school board elections from these bizarre dates in the winter where very few people show up, except the liberal establishment, to the general election date when more parents show up.
Sure.
And school board candidates really need to designate whether they're Republicans or Democrats so parents can know what their worldview is.
It's a good point. Yeah, so they can align with their ideas. Yeah. Well, thank you for answering that.
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify my.
I give grace to anyone running for office when you're in a crowd. Sometimes
We all need a little bit of grace.
it slips out the wrong way.
Yeah, it
Well,
did that day.
Well, let's talk a little bit about public safety. In our first interview, we talked about the marijuana stuff, the
Yeah.
foreign influence. You want to talk a little bit about your views on public safety?
This one is really a blight on bad leadership in the state of Oklahoma. The people of Oklahoma voted for medical marijuana. what they got was the wild, wild west of marijuana because the legislature never put proper guardrails on the system. And so we ended up, according to the director of Bureau of Narcotics, Donnie Anderson, we've become the #1 producer of pot. Now again, my opponent out there during this runoff is bragging about, shutting down 10,000 marijuana grow farms. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me if we're still the #1 producer of pot, in the country. And tied into this mess is this consequence of foreign ownership of land. When you're the cheapest place in the world to grow marijuana on as many acres as you want, because we didn't put any guardrails in the system, all this money has just flowed in from Chinese Communist Party entities and Chinese triad entities and Mexican cartels. And the legislature tried to do something about it in 2023, and your listeners can look this up. It's Senate Bill 212 from 2023, directed the Attorney General's office to create an affidavit that would be kind of a verification process to make sure only U.S. citizens were buying the property. I carry this with me everywhere I go. People can look it up, but the affidavit created by the Office of Attorney General, literally in the left-hand corner it says, OAG dash, and then there's some number. Item number 3 on that affidavit, Cody, written by the Attorney General's office, my opponent, you get 2 boxes you can check. The first box is, I certify that I'm a citizen of the United States. Check that box, buy whatever you want, grow what you want. But after the words United States is the word or. And the next box is your other choice. And I'm quoting this verbatim. Everybody can look it up. I'm not a citizen, but an alien who is or shall become a bona fide resident of the state of Oklahoma. You check that box, you can buy whatever you want. It's a complete whitewash, an absurd, egregious loophole that's in the system. So we've still got this mess on our hands. And I was told by a brave county clerk, I was literally in the office of a county clerk. He said to me, Senator Mazzei, here's the form, because it was the first time I'd actually seen the form. And after it gets completed, it goes in this drawer, and nobody ever looks at it again.
So there's really no audit?
Oh, heavens no.
Checks in
no, there's no Attorney General follow-up going on. And that's why we've got a public safety mess on our hands, and crime has increased. We're actually number 13 in the country in violent crimes per capita. And if we're gonna take that seriously, again, my opponent has failed in this arena, even though his very slick advertising campaign makes it, look like he's, tough when it comes to public safety. But I will sign some executive orders on day 1 to enforce the Oklahoma Constitution in Trump-like fashion, because our Constitution forbids the foreign ownership of land.
So just, the
How many days?
Constitution.
How many days did it take Donald Trump to fix the southern border?
Pretty much a couple days.
We're gonna fix this mess very quickly.
Good. Well, you want to touch on healthcare a little bit, and maybe touch on what may be coming down the road with Medicaid, Medicare funding from the federal level. It may hit in your administration.
It will hit
So,
during
touch on that
during
a
the
little
Mazzei administration.
Healthcare cost, and then the Medicaid, Medicare stuff.
Whenever we talk about healthcare, we first have to start with Sooner Care, because it covers 1 million Oklahomans. And the problem with Sooner Care is it's rife with waste, fraud, and abuse, but nothing's ever been done about it. Our friend, State Auditor Cindy Berg, released a report in 2020 that indicated there were $1.6 billion worth of questionable expenses in the Sooner Care system every year. that was before expansion. So I imagine that number is now $2.5 billion per year. And you know what the legislature did about her findings? Absolutely nothing. Well, over in the state of Tennessee, they got to work on some of these kind of issues, and it's now been documented that they saved $1 billion. So our new Office of State Finance and Fiscal Responsibility is going to get to work on the audit findings, start addressing this waste, fraud, and abuse. Let's say we say $500 million. Well, what will that do in terms of better access to doctors, which is the key to better healthcare, and better access to technology, which is the key to better healthcare, whether you're in Oklahoma County or you're in rural Oklahoma, where some of these rural hospitals are struggling. But $500 million could go a long way.
Always, for sure. Yeah, talking rural, and that goes back to education too. There's kind of the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area, and then there's everyone else. So me being from the rural area, we want access to healthcare, to clinics, and it's really hard for those small hospitals and individual doctors to survive, right?
It is. We've got people often say when it comes to education or healthcare or public safety, well, we got a money problem. Our budget is $32 billion. We don't have a money problem in Oklahoma. We have a money management problem. And with what the Lord has blessed me with in terms of a long financial career, I do have a mastery in money and finance, and we think we can address the money management problem, particularly in our top 15 agencies, which need audits and really get to the bottom of being more responsible with the taxpayer money.
Sure, yeah. And then we're able to cut taxes. If we save the taxpayer money, we can cut their taxes a little
You're
bit.
talking my language.
Well, let's jump to also one of the things I wanted to talk about, of course, one of the hot topics is data centers, AI data centers, and then just your data storage. And you want to touch on
They're
the hot
coming.
topic. And
they're here.
it's really in Northeast Oklahoma, probably affected the most, right?
It is. There's kind of a right way and a wrong way. President Trump, himself has talked about this. So in my view, we want to be part of the artificial intelligence, new world, which requires lots of processing power. And Oklahoma is pretty attractive because, we have a lower cost of energy here. So that's why all these entities are interested in Oklahoma. But having said that, we need some proper guardrails. We talked about how marijuana became a mess because there weren't proper guardrails. We think the guardrails need to be, one, they should produce their own power generation, so the electricity demand on the grid doesn't spike prices for the rest of us. President Trump himself has talked about that. There's an amazing project going on in Port of Muskogee with a company called Core Scientific, and they're literally building like 200 of these small natural gas turbines, so they produce their own power for their data center. The second component is that the data centers, I think, should really go on, locally improved industrial space.
Right.
We don't want it gobbling up Oklahoma precious farmland. Again, the project in Muskogee is happening on, industrial space that's locally approved at the Port of Muskogee. 3, no tax money. We don't need to give, Google or Meta, or Apple or Microsoft taxpayer dollars. And fourth, I understand from both people in the industry and outside the industry that these advanced closed loop cooling systems that some of the data centers are now using is a very important technology component that pretty much results in, say, the water usage of a 300-room hotel every night. And, that's an acceptable, component. So those are, I think, the conditions we would like to see in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think most citizens are worried about the environmental impact, the impact to their local communities, like you said, where they're building in a neighborhood somewhere, they're worried about that, and then using our precious water, especially the further west we get.
Yeah.
Water's a very precious resource, but if that
Indeed.
technology can be figured out.
It's already in place, and many companies are making sure that's part of their new construction.
And I think, like you were saying, that's part of the Trump agenda. And we talk about, and we saw during COVID, our supply chain of everything, whether it's defense and manufacturing.
Let's not have China controlling this stuff. Let's be in charge of it.
So if we agree that, our AI we should control our own artificial intelligence and our data, we got to have it.
We got to have it
Together,
here.
right?
There's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. In Oklahoma, we want to do it the right way.
You probably understand, like the Google facility in Pryor. It's been around for almost 20 years now.
I think
Are there long, people think that there's not
I think it
long-term
goes back
job
to
impacts?
2009 or 2011.
So
Obviously,
ad valorem.
the initial construction creates a big economic, juice to the local economy. There's not a lot of long-term permanent jobs, but as long as we don't give away the farm,
Right.
And these entities pay a proper amount of property taxes going forward, they're boons to the local, communities, particularly the schools.
Sure. Long term, they will pay really good ad valorem property tax, right? Mm-hmm. And can supplement our homestead.
There you go.
Businesses can supplement homestead exemption. So kind of along the same lines, another hot topic is manufacturing. And we go to the aluminum plant, which has been kind of in talks for a couple of years now. So do you want to touch on this smelter plant, what it is, why we need it, why Trump wants it, and kind of tell us the story?
It was approved by the legislature in 2025, Governor Stitt and the House and the Senate. I wasn't around at the time. And I did have some questions and concerns about what seemed like a large investment package. Now, I talked with a local economist, a friend of mine early on, and he said, well, it could turn out to be a great deal if the ecosystem around the aluminum plant really explodes. And then earlier this spring, there was an important article about that ecosystem starting to develop because a company from here in Oklahoma City, MD Products, was establishing its own entity next to the aluminum plant to be part of this new chain of not just making the aluminum, but then turning it into what they call aluminum logs, so those can be distributed to all parts of the country. And then I learned from the Trump administration that we're importing 80% of our aluminum, and it's a national security threat because China controls 60% of the aluminum. So, I had concerns, but then the more I learned, the more I thought this is important from a national security perspective. My dad's a Vietnam vet. My nephew today is a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter pilot, and those helicopters need aluminum.
That's aircraft grade aluminum.
Yeah, not to mention what we need for our cars and my wife's F-150. Then the Trump administration also shared with me the economic boom it can create in Oklahoma, because once those jobs and the jobs around it grow to what's estimated to be 9,000 to 10,000 jobs, it ends up being a $25 billion impact, and that's 10% of Oklahoma's economy. So that's why President Trump is so proud and focused on this project, because it's important to national defense. And he believes it's going to be this economic boom in Oklahoma that lots of other states had. And so it was really, I'm a data guy, I'm a financial planner. I like to say we do our due diligence, and if the due diligence and the research leads to a different perspective, then okay, now I have a different perspective. And with that, of course, we have to have proper safety and proper technology so the local air and water is safe. And again, the more due diligence we did there, the more we found out that this new aluminum plant, partly owned by a US company, partly owned by a UAE company, is deploying technology that's already been deployed across the world. Norway, for example, and the fluoride emissions are literally half, more than half, but half of what the current EPA standards are. And the project manager that's in charge of this, again, in spite of the fear mongering going on by my opponent, literally lives 3 miles away from the aluminum plant in the UAE.
Yeah.
So the technology's safe. The Department of Environmental Quality is on the job. I literally talked with Secretary of Energy and Environment, Jeff Starling, about this, and we're just going to try to keep getting people the information that shows it's safe, it's an economic powerhouse, and we're going to contribute to the national security of our defense and our military men and women serving our country.
Yeah, I think the trickle-down effect will be great, especially if we all agree that we want manufacturing to be brought back. And
Let's bring
Oklahoma's
it.
sitting in the crossroads of America. We're sitting in a good place for it.
And we're the aerospace,
Yeah.
engine of the United States in a lot of ways, both for defense and commercial. And let's make the aluminum here. And
I think we do. We need domestic energy, domestic manufacturing, whether that's medical supplies we saw during COVID,
spot
all
on.
these things, and even our artificial intelligence. So
Absolutely.
we have to give a little bit if we want that gain, right?
We can do all that in the right way. Look at our oil and gas industry. Very successful. We've helped power the world, for generations, and we learned how to do it in an environmentally sound way with, proper stewardship. And this is going to be the exact same thing, I think, in Oklahoma as we make sure things are done the right way for data centers and an aluminum plant.
Manufacturing and AI data centers will increase demand for Oklahoma natural gas, right?
We got really, really bright engineers who know how to put the right technology in place.
Yeah, which would in turn will be good for landowners and farmers and ranchers in western Oklahoma. And
It will.
yeah, we talked about a little bit. We touched on property insurance and affordable housing. That's been another big topic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in the general it's going to be a big topic. So do you want to touch on your views of property insurance and affordable housing?
Yeah. It obviously does not make sense that Oklahoma's been the most expensive state in the nation for homeowners insurance. And something I started talking about a while ago was we need to change from what's called a use and file system, where insurance companies just say, well, actually, they just raise the rates and then they notify the insurance department. And the insurance department can decide later if they want to check it out. Well, the legislature, as I had been, or many of us had been discussing this past year, have moved us now to a file and wait system, whereas the insurance companies have to disclose, here's what we plan on doing, and then there's kind of a review period. That's what they have in Texas and some other states, and it seems to have put some guardrails on rates going up too high too fast. But the most important thing we can do to really bring rates down is lawsuit reform in the property and casualty industry. Now, I'm a small business owner who worked on lawsuit reform when I was in the Senate. My opponent's a trial lawyer who literally likes to sue farmers and ranchers and threaten their very livelihoods by going after their business partners. He's not going to talk about lawsuit reform like we will, because all of his trial lawyer buddies fund his campaign. But in the state of Florida, they executed, or I should say implemented, lawsuit reform, so attorneys weren't chasing higher costs and higher damages on car stuff, car accidents, and replacing a roof. And what happened, Cody, is they got the legal costs for the insurance companies, State Farm, Allstate, USAA, Farmers. The internal legal costs went from $3 billion in 2023 to $100 million.
Oh, wow.
And because of that huge savings, they've been able to roll out a decrease in property casualty rates of 14%. Wow. That's what we're going to work on in the Mazzei administration to bring costs down for homeowners insurance. So we're going to get rid of property taxes for seniors and veterans, and we're going to work to bring down premiums on property and casualty insurance for homes and cars by 10 to 15%.
Wow, that'll be interesting. It'll be good for Oklahoma.
Love talking about those solutions.
Yeah, you bet. I think we've touched on just about all the major topics. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or any info that we didn't cover?
I love the opportunity to give everyone a little bit more detail on our plan to make Oklahoma no income tax state, abolish property taxes for seniors and veterans, launch a massive statewide literacy program, get young men and women a skilled trade, and work on better public safety for our communities by dealing with this nonsense of foreign adversaries owning our land. So I'm really grateful that we got to dive into all those details. And when Oklahoma chooses faith and freedom and unites around a solid plan that true conservatives want to work on at the state capitol, in the office of governor, in the House, and in the Senate, together we can all usher in a golden age of growth and opportunity for our kids and our grandkids. So for your listeners and viewers, we sure would appreciate their vote and support on August 25th. If they want to join Team Mazzei, they can send us an email by getting on our website at mikeforok.com. We do have to raise a lot of money for these TV ads, so if they'd like to donate 10 or 25, 50, $100, that would be a blessing too. You can also do that at mikeforok.com. And thank you for the service that you do to get conservative ideas and solutions discussed.
You bet, Mike. Well, thank you very much I know you're busy. Thanks for sitting down with us. And like what you were saying, if they want to go check you out and learn more about your plan or donate, join the team, they can go to your website. So, okay, Mike, well, best of luck in the runoff, and thanks again for sitting down with me.
Thanks for having me, Cody.